Welcome to Smart Remarks, where we still like the working man, even if it adds $1 to the cost of a bottle of vino. So Pennsylvania Governor Tom Corbett has proposed selling the state store system. He becomes the latest in a long line of governors and legislators to talk about getting rid of the Pennsylvania Liquor Control Board and making wine, beer, and liquor more accessible, easier to buy here in Pennsylvania. I support the proposal to an extent because if you've ever tried to buy alcohol here in Pennsylvania, you'll know what a pain in the butt it is. You're limited in your selection, you're limited in the number of hours the stores are open. If you want to buy a bottle of wine on a Sunday, for example, you got to wait till noon and watch out because the place closes at 5, and in 2013, I'm sorry, this is just unacceptable. And yet, at the same time, while I support modernizing the system, I'd like to try to do so in a way that limits the impact on the state store union workers. From what I read, Governor Corbett would simply get rid of or sell off the existing state stores and then sell off a whole bunch of new licenses. Idling, I guess, 3,500 union workers in the process. And now they might wind up getting a job with some of the people who buy these new licenses, but do you think they'll be paid union wages? Do you think they'll be paid a decent wage? Do you think they'll get decent benefits? You think they'll get any benefits at all? And I think, here are people who've done nothing wrong. They work for a system, sure, but these are people who make a decent wage. They probably live in your neighborhood. Their kids probably go to school with your kids. You might see them at the gym or the grocery store. They volunteer for community organizations. They're contributing members of this society specifically because they are paid a middle-class wage with middle-class benefits, and that benefits the broader society as a whole. But see, they are government workers, and we're in the midst of what we might call a war on government workers in this country. Many on the right are outraged because government workers, particularly unionized government workers, drive up our taxes and we pay more than we should have to. And unions, of course, are big supporters of Democratic politicians. But I get this idea that it's not just that some on the right hate unions as sort of an organized force. They seem to hate the individuals who are members of unions. They seem to hate the fact that a state store worker here in Pennsylvania might make a livable wage because that means the booze is going to be more expensive here than it is in places like Delaware and Maryland. And it might be, but this whole idea that this antiquated system is due to the greedy people of the unions, it's kind of ridiculous. It's kind of punitive. And I think to myself, why do we have to punish these people? Why do we have to punish people whose only crime, quote unquote, is to work for the system that we have? Maybe here in Pennsylvania we'll get rid of that system. I tend to doubt it, but maybe we will. But I'd like to ask the people who hate unions, what do you think is a fair wage for someone working in a liquor store? Should they make minimum wage? Should they make $10 an hour? Would you personally be willing to pay 15 cents more for a bottle of wine so they can make $12 an hour? Should they get any benefits, or should they just be treated like serfs? Just deal with it, take what you got, and if you don't like it, you can go quit and find another job. Is that what ought to happen? As I said, I support the idea of privatization or limited privatization here in Pennsylvania, and that ultimately may cost some state store jobs. But I don't see a middle-class workforce that's been created by the current system as a problem. I don't see it as a bug. I see it as a feature. Ultimately, we may wind up getting rid of some of those jobs, and yeah, you may wind up saving money on your next bottle of wine as a result, but you also got to ask, what kind of society are you buying in the process?